And hey everybody, welcome to the Daily Space Weather. Welcome to the Smash Bunker. I'm your host Dan, aka smAsho. Today we'll be talking about blizzard warnings, the radio flux of the sun's outer corona. The 10.7 centimeter radio flux has dipped. Some extreme close-ups of Sunspot 2776, and a little bit about Shut Up Fauci. We'll get to it. First, we're looking at the local yellow dwarf, otherwise known as the sun. And oddly, we see a sunspot here in the north. It hasn't been named yet, apparently. And we saw Umbre yesterday and today. Maybe they disappeared and reappeared. Also, another active region rising in the southeast. And it looks like some filamentary releases have happened in the northeast. Let me zoom in a little bit. See all those little filaments up there? By the end of the run, they are gone, and that would be an indication that they've collapsed back onto the chromosphere. As we didn't see any coronal mass ejections here in the past 24. We did report on one yesterday. If you didn't watch yesterday's video, please do so. Here is the close-up of Sunspot 2776 in 171 angstroms. And we've got 3 more wavelengths to show you this view in. Some delightful images here. And there's a coronal hole trailing that sunspot as well, visible in both of these wavelengths. Here's 304 angstroms, which is a ionized state of helium. And we do get great views of sunspots and their 3-dimensional properties as they move toward the limb. Here's 131 angstroms, another ionized state of iron. And this one, along with 94, actually takes 10 images per minute instead of only 2. A property shared with only the 94 angstroms. It's been pretty stable here, it looks like. Not a whole lot of changes with the magnetism or anything like that. And lastly, here's 94 angstroms. One of my personal favorites. And there is still some likelihood of some solar flares coming out of this sunspot as it reaches the limb. And it all has to do with the shape of the magnetic loops associated with the outskirts of a sunspot and the way the electrons take a path. The radio flux has dropped down to 72, and for you new viewers, thanks for tuning in. The radio flux is another measurement of overall solar activity. It's directly proportional to sunspot cycle, as you can see from the Space Weather Enthusiast dashboard. The KP index, geomagnetic unrest here for the past 15 hours. And looking at the GOES X-ray flux to see no significant flaring happening here. And don't get your solar flares confused with coronal mass ejections. Solar flares are photons, namely X-rays. Coronal mass ejections are protons, mostly hydrogen nuclei. So we don't see any big proton strikes. No surprises there. Let's take a look at the solar wind. And we've seen an uptick here in the solar wind speed. So you're in a solar wind coronal hole wind stream right now. It reached all the way up to 530 kilometers a second or so, 553. And as we forecasted yesterday, we saw an uptick in the solar wind density all the way up to 35 protons per cubic centimeter, and then a ramp down of the density and a ramp up of the solar wind speed. Currently significantly elevated here at 528 kilometers per second for a solar wind velocity, solar wind density 8.12 protons per cubic centimeter. It's come down as we forecasted. Phi angle currently 162, and that's in degrees as it is an angle. Next, looking at geospace magnetosphere movies, and we'll show you all 3: velocity, density, and pressure. And what you're looking at here is the equatorial plane view and the meridional plane view, as if you're looking down at the Earth's poles, and then at the Earth from the side. The sun would be to your left. Here is the density. Keep in mind, low density is shown in white, high density is shown in dark blue. We don't see a real high density right now, and this would have looked more interesting when that solar wind density was at 35 protons per cubic centimeter. And lastly, we'll show you the pressure. There is the pressure, and it's significantly high pressure, and that's induced by that high velocity solar wind. And just since that refreshed, we'll let that play through. I don't know why it refreshed, since I just refreshed it. This is 4 hours of data courtesy University of Michigan. And we show it daily. Next is the geospace ground magnetic perturbations, looking at the magnetic situation a little closer to home on planet Earth. Here's 4 hours of data on ground magnetic perturbations as we live through a geomagnetic excursion. And we do see evidence of a North Pole over Siberia, a North Pole over Canada, and the South Pole south of Australia somewhere. Also, some significant magnetic pulses coming out of places like the South Pacific, south of Hawaii. And we covered that last year at this time, too. Next, we'll look at the polar views here. And if you're in a spot where you can see aurorae, you may see some beefed up aurora as a result of this high-speed coronal hole wind stream. Again, that's 4 hours of data, and it's also University of Michigan. We hope the data will be archived and accessible at a later time. Next, looking at the GOES magnetometer, and we see some big spikes here, and that's typically what you see when you get a coronal hole wind stream because, well, plasma is forced to align and be heated up by magnetic fields, and when it does so, it has a tendency to skew the GOES magnetometer, where you're getting a reading altered by the plasma in between you and the sun. Next, looking at the top view ecliptic plane field plot. This data is 1 hour and 32 minutes old, and it's not showing a sudden snap into the South Pole current sheet. Earth still potential field force lined up with the North Pole current sheet shown in green. And here's the line of sight field plot, which shows the sun's B field in blue. And next we'll look at the coronal field plot. Here is the potential field force line plot of the corona itself. And you can see a bunch of potential field force lines in the open state there, shown in black, associated with the North Pole. Coronal hole field force lines shown in purple, and closed potential field force lines shown in pink. And let's talk daily solar wind. Here is the 1 year chart of the daily solar wind as provided by solin.info/solar. I just wanted to show that for once. And no other comments on that. And we've entered into another episode of the Smash Lights, where I talk about whatever I want. Well, Shep Smith, who worked for Fox News for 23 years, he was a very important news editor, and he was also responsible for breaking news, now works for CNBC, and he has told people to follow the Fauci. Now, for some reason, I guess he must be a lemming. He wants to follow Fauci off a cliff, since Fauci is now telling people to wear masks, and maybe if they won't wear masks, it'll have to be mandated. Oh, noes! Let's try it out, see if it works. Well, oh my God, pardon the sarcasm, wearing a mask is COVIDiotic. And that's about all I have to say about that. And since there are such shocking levels of COVIDiocy, I've decided to start campaigning for Liberace Crowley 2020. So now the campaign is sponsored by Milton Bradley, Ouija boards, official media relations agent for the Liberace Crowley 2020 presidential campaign. And there are some pros and cons associated with this. Now, both of these men are dead. However, it would be very interesting viewing a State of the Union address through a medium and a Ouija board, or perhaps you'd be able to access your president and vice president directly using a crystal ball or some other scrying technique. It seems like a great idea to me. Liberace Crowley 2020. Share it with your friends and foes. If you follow us on social media, you may have already seen the graphics, and we've also been campaigning on the website. And let's get back to Fauci for a quick minute. This one goes out to you, Keeps. Fauci came from a terrible side of town, and everybody with a brain aptly put Fauci down. Fauci, I'm not a fan of you or what you do. Also, Fauci, please shut your pie hole too. And so I say now, shut up, Fauci! Fauci, shut up! Now that I've gotten that out of my system, if you enjoy the content, please press like and subscribe on YouTube. Also follow us on other social media, visit the links, and attempt to support the channel if possible, as we strive to keep these videos free and publicly available. We are on BitChute as well, thanks to our subscribers over on BitChute. And here ends today's very brief Smashlight segment. Next, we're going to talk about the electron flux. And I'm not going to get into the cosmological aspects of the electron flux. It's a very important aspect of Earth's geomagnetic situation, and so we monitor it regularly. It has to do with things like GPS errors and satellite drag and charging hazards and so on. Here's the 1-year graph, and we're back into a more nominal range of electron flux to the point where we do see some charging hazards there, which are a little bit anomalous. They are over mainly Mexico and northern South America. My forecast for the electron content was exactly correct yesterday, slightly lower than NOAA forecasted. And they're forecasting it to go up today, and they would be wrong once again. It's going to crater throughout the day today until that coronal hole wind stream subsides. Then it will jump back up precipitously. There's a 3-day chart. Here's a total electron content forecast visualization. And we see those significant electron flux anomalies around the northern North America, and right in this area. You see the entire North Polar region gets a major electron flux. Very interesting. I've never seen it before. And there would have been massive GPS errors in the North Polar region, which is not really the normal state of affairs. I'll let it play through a second time, as that's a bit anomalous there. And that indeed does have something to do with geomagnetism. Those electrons are aligning to the Earth's magnetic fields. And we're not going to talk about how those are generated, as that is for a later show. Maybe we'll talk about it briefly today with Eugene Bagashov. Here's just one slice of the atmosphere. It's the ionosphere layer. And it's looking a little bit more normal than that last visualization of the electron flux. Here's the latest image, and that one's from 10:30 Universal Time. It's pretty normal looking there. I like to use in-the-sky.org. We're not officially affiliated. But if you're up before dawn, you may see the third brightest object in the sky, Venus. Just put in your location, and it'll show you what's going on above your head. I face mine to the south, and I draw in the ecliptic because reasons. Next, looking at the solar system at theplanetstoday.com. Here's where things are now. Here's where things will be in a week. And we will indeed be making all kinds of changes. It's a full moon, it's a blue moon, it's Halloween, it's going to be exciting. We're making changes to the Patreon tiers and all kinds of other stuff. Stay tuned for lots of different stuff happening here at the Smash News Network. Next, we're going to look at earthquakes. And we see a bit of a lull here in earthquakes. Nothing too exciting happening here. A deep quake strikes Argentina, as well as Vanuatu. And those two deep quakes were 2.5 hours apart. The deep quake at Vanuatu was a 5.2 magnitude. The one at Argentina was a 5.0 magnitude, and they were both close to the 100 kilometers. And then only 11 minutes later, after the Vanuatu quake, we see a 574 kilometer deep quake at the Fiji Islands at a magnitude of 4.6. Deep quake out in the Aleutian Islands there, a 4.2 at a 207 kilometer depth, a 4.7 at Fiji at nearly 600 kilometers depth. Significant number of volcanoes erupting. Let's take a look at volcanodiscovery.com. Suwanosejima does not show volcanic ash in satellite imagery. Semeru is exploding. 13,000 foot ash plume there. Dakono exploding. 7,000 foot ash plume there. Popocatépetl appears to have dispersed its volcanic ash, although there's still steam emissions. I wouldn't build a campsite at the lower slopes of that, as I don't want to be encased in a thermoclastic flow. Sangay exploding. 20,000 foot ash plume. Revenador exploding. 15,000 foot ash plume. Sabancaya exploding. 24,000 ash plume. And while volcanic ash is not identifiable in the satellite data about Copahu, please do not attempt to pole vault the caldera. We've got blizzard warnings in northern Montana. Check it out, that orange there. Those are blizzard warnings, as well as all kinds of winter advisories and freeze warnings all the way into the Texas stovepipe. Check it out. Major cold temperatures there. We won't look up cold anomalies because there's enough of that on YouTube to confuse everybody. To inform everybody of how cold it is. And if some global warming imbecile is telling you that it's so cold that it's hot, that's not how thermodynamics works. It's so cold that it's so hot that it's cold, folks. Oh my God, it's gotten so hot that it's cold. Here are the jet streams of the Western world. Here are the jet streams of the Eastern world. And next we're over at windy.com to show you the snow depth chart. And this also shows you pressure cells. We'll let this advance, and you can see snow will just continue to fall and fall and fall. And the reason we can't show the GFS forecast for this is because there is no GFS forecast for snow depth. So we're looking at strictly the Euro forecast. And look at the pressure isolines, how closely aligned they are here. That is an indication of massive pressure gradients. And that's what happens when you see major winds and all kinds of big storms. We're going to advance this all the way into Monday at noontime. And there is the expected snow depth. According to the GFS forecast, you're going to have about a foot of snow in the southern Rockies. Shout out to our viewers, contributors, friends and foes from the southern Rockies. Just kidding, folks. We don't really have any foes. Yeah. Don't really have any enemies. It's not a thing. Probably not worthy. Sorry, COVID, you're not worthy of being an enemy either. I guess I must have hurt its feelings. Looking at lightningmaps.org, there's quite a lot of lightning over the Gulf and Caribbean. Here's the NASA GOES 16 lightning mapper. And check out those lightning storms southwest of the Yucatan. That is just like a constant lightning insanity. As well as north of Bermuda. You may be able to see some sprites from Bermuda if you're looking to the north. Also some significant lightning over the Mississippi-Alabama border. Next, looking at the U.S. Doppler radar map. Snow continues to fall in the north-central U.S., now spreading into even northeastern Washington, northern Idaho, and a long line of rain stretches all the way from Maine to the Gulf. Here's what's going on the cloud layer, and despite it being dark, we can see it. Why? Because water emits radiation, yes. So we're looking at the NASA GOES interactive weather satellites shortwave radiation. Next, we'll look at the water vapor map to give folks a better idea of what's going to happen next, as the Doppler radar can be a bit deceptive. Let's zoom in on Wyoming. And there you can see the leeward sides of the Rockies are going to see a little more snow. And you can see some massive pressure gradients are going to start to form there in central Colorado. As that moisture moves over those mountains, you'll see a massive pressure gradient there. And believe me, if you're flying a plane across this area like this, or like this, it'll be like riding on a bus down a bumpy dirt road. Because that dry air is much more massive than the moist air. And for you Easterners, here is the water vapor situation for the Mid-Atlantic region. And we've got some dry air mixed in there, creating a bit of a pincer effect. And let's move on to thank our patrons, the true source of funding for the content. Please consider becoming a Patreon. It's patreon.com/smAsho. We need lots more funding to accomplish what we would like to in the year 2020. So check that out. You will get all kinds of updates before anybody else, as well as things like ringtones, free music, graphics, etc. Thanks again to our patrons. Thanks for the Smash team. It's time for me, smAsho, to... It is time for me to vanish, but first we're going to show you the featured shirt. So today's featured shirt is the Mansa shirt, which stands for Make America Not Suck Again. It also has our website on there. Have you noticed a pathetic pandemic of political propaganda presenting putrid prospects for people? Well, it's up to you to make America not suck again. Visit our links, such as at smAshomash.com. You'll see Smash Store and smAsho Store. Check those out. Thanks from the bottom of our hearts to everybody who has checked stuff out, supported the channel, etc. Thanks for being a part of the Smash team. Please share the content on your social media. Visit the links. Our social media is all listed there, as well as our affiliate link. And if you'd like to get a Mansa shirt for yourself, please do so. Also, if you'd like to win a free shirt, time's running out. The contest ends Monday. All you got to do is go to the smAshomash.com/forum. Details in there, pinned to every forum. And again, there's the Mansa shirt. Allow me to vanish, like the credibility of the press, and the credibility of big tech, and the credibility of corporations, and the credibility of the government. Yes. By the way, thanks for flying American Smashways. Please remember to keep your head and arms inside the Smash plane at all times, because we have bonus features. And here are said bonus features. It's the most recent colorized magnetogram. There's Sunspot 2776, and you can see some magnetic mixing going on at the front there. You can see that leading North Pole field associated with that umbra. So the umbra is entirely South Pole, and that leading field is an increased probability of a little bit of solar flaring, perhaps a coronal mass ejection coming out of that. Let's go look at this area where we saw umbre in show prep, up here in the top center, and that certainly looks like a sunspot to me. Those are North Pole polarity shown in green and blue, and it looks like it's going to be an alpha class sunspot. Let's take a look. And once again, I see umbre there, so they're pretty weak, they're pretty small, but they've actually grown a little bit here since we did show prep. Perhaps that's something to keep an eye on. And when I say ion, the pun is intentional. Speaking of ions, here are some iron ions. It's 193 angstroms. It's a 48-hour SDO video. And the coronal hole wind stream that you're currently seeing is out of those North Pole associated coronal hole areas. And we could see a significant time frame for this coronal hole wind stream. I would expect this to last at least 24 hours. Possibly even a little bit longer than that. But in any case, thanks for tuning in. Look for another video coming out today. It's going to be an interview with somebody, and if you haven't watched earlier in the video, well, you probably might not know who it's going to be with. We'll tell you all about it. Remember to stare at the sun, attempt to understand the physics. Welcome to the Neo-Renaissance, and since it'll never be now again, may that solar wind be at your back.